Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. And welcome to another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. I have with me today Toni Neary. How are you today, Toni?
I'm great, Megan. How are you? Happy Friday. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm doing well. Thank you. So I like to start off every conversation that I have with the Mavens I invite to the show with a little background information for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are affiliated with, and some of the roles that you are responsible for with that affiliation. So can you start off with a little bit of background information about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of fell into the manufacturing industry, like 17 years ago. That makes me seem really old though. So let's say like 5 years ago.
Okay.
I went to work for a little .com company called Tooling U, and I was employee number 8. I knew nothing about manufacturing other than if Dad worked on Saturday, we'd have steak instead of hot dogs. And if he worked on Sunday, I could ask for designer jeans. That was pretty much the extent of my manufacturing knowledge. So I started working there, and they were building online curriculum to allow manufacturers to train new employees. So we have to rewind back to that time. We were hiring people from Blockbuster Video and Burger King that had little to no exposure to manufacturing. So everything from like basic shop math and blueprint all the way up through advanced CNC programming classes. So I started there and realized that manufacturing was really cool. It was an amazing career. There was so much upward mobility available. And then I started working with a handful of schools that we worked with that were using the online content in the classroom. And it was like a spark was lit inside of me that there were so many amazing manufacturing programs, amazing instructors. And when I started to talk about some of the concerns and issues they had, they were things like recruiting, funding, working with students on IEPs, which I had no clue what that was. I wasn't even a mother yet. And so I started to really learn more about what is an individualized education plan, what type of students do really well in these programs. And I really started to build a great rapport with instructors on finding out who was their demographics? Were they urban, rural, suburban? What were their challenges about getting in front of parents and students and really filling their classrooms? And it really did just light a passion for me for manufacturing education. So we created, and then I headed up the government and education group there. I was with Tooling U for 10 and a half years, and it was an amazing 10 and a half years. I learned so much, and I really got to know some of the best programs in the country, and there's so many. So after that, I took like my gap year before I came to the position where I am now, and I went to a company called Edge Factor. And they do really high-level media productions, highlighting and storytelling to show what careers in manufacturing really look like. And while I was there, I was recruited for the position I have now. I work for Morris Group. We're based out of Connecticut. We own 17 companies, and I sit within 5 of those within our division for Haas. So Haas CNC machines, I represent them for the Morris Group in 14 states. And my goal is like director of education, and the Haas Tower sounds really fancy. It's pretty much my home office right now that you're looking at. This is as fancy as it gets. But my job is to really grow, strengthen, and help create manufacturing programs and help them really be the best they can be. So I like to say my job is to elevate the manufacturing industry through high schools, career centers, community and technical colleges, and universities. And I love it. I still get to work with the best programs. I get to go and talk to young ladies about careers in manufacturing, as well as young men. And more importantly, I get to bridge the gap because I speak both languages, education and industry, because I feel like we sit in a room and we have the same conversation, and one leaves like, oh, that's awesome, this is going to happen. And the other's like, that's awesome, this is going to happen. It's like, were we in the same room? Right. Do we have the same conversation? So that's a little bit about my pathway in. And now, I mean, I'm so passionate about creating awareness and just really creating environments that foster equity and diversity within manufacturing, because it does not look representative of the world, right?
Right. So to back up a little bit, you mentioned Haas, and then there's the Morris Group. So can you go over a little bit where that connection is? How did they get involved with each other? Is Haas something that came out of Morris Group, or did they partner somewhere along the line back in the day? Like, what's the connection there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Morris Group has been around for over 80 years. We're based in Connecticut. So we have a Haas division, Okuma, Sugami, Remco, I'm sure I'm forgetting some of the other companies that we have. But Haas Automation was founded in 1988 by Gene Haas. It's still owned by him in Oxnard, California. We are the last CNC machine manufacturer left in the US, where we actually manufacture all of our equipment in a 1 million square foot facility in Oxnard, California. And Gene also started the Gene Haas Foundation. So I do a lot of work for the foundation on the high school and community college and university circuit as well. But the way that it's set up is we're a dealership. So almost like if you buy a Honda, you don't buy it directly from Honda, you buy it from the dealership. It's the same way. So we're exclusive. And in the 14 states that we represent Haas Automation, we're the only person that actually sells into the market. We service all the equipment as well. So all of the sales engineers, application engineers, service technicians are all employed by Morris Group within our Haas division. But it's a great partnership, and we have a very close relationship with, the factory, as we like to call it. And we work really collectively with them on a lot of our education initiatives. I did a recruiting video for our company a few years ago, trying to help spread the message about careers in machining. And the factory saw it and we're like, great, we're going to put this on our website. So they actually put me up on their YouTube channel. So we work very cohesively and receptively together, kind of feeding information back and forth.
That's great. And Haas is such a well-known brand within the United States. And I feel like anyone in manufacturing, if they don't know Haas, and they're trapped under a rock somewhere.
Between the, Stuart Haas Racing, Haas F1, Haas Automation, the Gene Haas Foundation, H-Tech Centers, all of our programs. I mean, Haas is just in the education space, over 2,500 schools in the US. So we have a really big market presence. And it's the same in industry. I don't work as much on the industry side other than like, here's things that you can do to engage with educators. Here's things you can do to share information about careers in manufacturing. But yeah, we have a huge sales force that works both sides of the audience, both industry and education as well.
So let's talk about some of these programs that you're working with and trying to implement with, schools. Can you name a few of them? Is it all focused on CNC machining, or what are some of the main things that you focus on within these programs, and how are you having these conversations with schools?
Yeah, absolutely. So we predominantly work with CNC programs, but we also have a ton of engineering programs that have CNC equipment. And I'll tell you, they're the best in the country because they're actually training people on what can and cannot be machined. So everything from, a small local high school, like I work with Auburn Career Center here in Ohio. It's 15 minutes down the road from me. Lakeland Community College is our local community college. They just bought 12 brand new Haas machines. So they just invested, a lot of money to revamp their entire CNC program. Greater Chicago area, we have Daly College, who's doing so much for diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. So working with at-risk youth and incumbent workers and upskilling their workforce. Purdue University, very well known, has a Gene Haas CNC laboratory, not a lab because it's a university campus, so it's a laboratory. So we work with all of those types of programs. I work with about 400 schools in my 14-state footprint. I was just at Meridian Community College in Mississippi last week for their ribbon cutting that had been delayed a year due to COVID. And that's a brand new Gene Haas Center, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a great program. Brian Warren is really well respected throughout the entire state of Mississippi. So his program, we worked with the Gene Haas Foundation. He received a $250,000 grant award to help build out and get his program into a better space, air-conditioned lab, which Mississippi in August with no air conditioning. And he was terrible. I was like, this is like a nightmare. I'm literally melting. Like the Wicked Witch of the West, I'm melting. I'm a puddle right now. So now Brian has a program that reflects the caliber of training that he's doing, as well as the caliber of student that's coming out of his program. So it's a lot of fun. Normally twice a year, I have about $1 million in grant checks that are funneling through my dining room table to go out to high schools and colleges. And those scholarship funds are really to help provide opportunities and equity for students that want to explore careers in machining and manufacturing. So we're really pretty laser focused in the CNC and machine tool technology area, but we work with a ton of engineering programs that do, FIRST Robotics or VEX Robotics or NRL. We support and sponsor those through the Gene Haas Foundation as well. So it's really about, how do we really elevate the industry as a whole by highlighting how fast-paced, high-tech, and fun it is to work in manufacturing.
So throughout your experience in, working together with schools and manufacturers, and maybe this is a two-part question because I really want to know, one of the biggest pain points that I keep hearing about is trying to get students attracted to the manufacturing sector. And my goal for Mavens is getting women involved more in manufacturing. So when you're talking to both the manufacturers and the schools, what are each of them, what can each of them improve on in terms of trying to get the attention from younger generations and get them excited about manufacturing? What are they missing the mark on?
Absolutely. And this is such a great question, because one of the things that we start to see is girls in STEM education start to wane off around the 5th grade area. So I can tell you I have an incoming 5th grade daughter who is, she's on a WEP. She's been identified as gifted in math. She has zero confidence in her math skills. Zero. She is so good, so smart. And her teacher last year said, if I call on her, she knows the answer 100% of the time, but she will not raise her hand. And she keeps going through this monologue of she's just not good at math. And it's like, you're brilliant at math. You're beyond good. So for me, it's, and if you've read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, I was actually just in a 2-hour meeting with our senior VP of HR and 6 other female leaders in our company of how do we actually start to recruit and attract more female talent. There's a huge disparagement. Men will apply for a job that they hit 60% of the qualifications. Women don't apply until they hit 100%. So if we're setting these programs out and showing great careers in manufacturing and you're doing an open house and all they see are male students, females are going to start to say, this is probably not for me. So I tell my machining instructors, I don't care if you fake it. Bring in your sister, your niece, your daughter, your cousin, whoever, put safety glasses on her, pull back her hair and get photos of her in front of those machines for social media, because we have to start showing the image of women in these roles, because we're not being told it's an option, right? We're not being told you could go through school and you could be a CNC operator. You could be a CNC programmer. You could make 6 figures with little to no college. OPS, your manufacturer will pay for you to go there. So it's really interesting to me that there's this disparagement between women applying for jobs and even applying for programs like manufacturing and machining versus the male counterparts who are like, oh yeah, my grandfather was a machinist. My uncle was a machinist. My dad was a tool and die maker. So I just think we need to start changing the conversation, and we need to start having the conversation with a female audience. In the recruiting video I did for Haas, they were doing a career day at school. They said, can you send in a video talking about what you do for a living? And I was like, better than that, I have like a highly produced one that I'll send to you. My son's 5th grade teacher called me and said, oh my gosh, we played your video. I loved it. My daughter doesn't know what she wants to do. She's very mechanically inclined. I was like, let's get her in a lab. Let's go and show her CNC programming. It's super high tech. It's computer programming. It's a great environment. It's, all encompassing for women, great career pathways. And then she sent it to the middle school. So then my middle school system said, hey, can we use this too? I was like, yes, absolutely. And then the high school was like, can we use it too? I was like, yes, get it out there. We need more women working in the trades. And I think you'd see the same in construction, right? A very low number of women in electrical and plumbing and HVAC and all these different areas, because we're just not talking about it. We're not saying it's an option.
Aaron Prathner said, Toni just knocked that out of the park. Women need to realize they have these options. Don't sell yourself short. Thank you, Aaron, for your comments. And anyone else listening in, if you have comments to share as well, please put them in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to show them during this episode. But I think you hit on a few great points too. My dad was in manufacturing my entire life. And the first story that I ever heard about his manufacturing experience is that he worked at the Fisher-Price factory, and we have a bunch of the old antique Fisher-Price toys that were made out of wood because that's what they made them out of initially. And we never really talked about it, and he and I never had a bond over manufacturing until I started doing Mavens, and he started hearing all these conversations that I was having, and he was like, wait, what are you doing? Like, you're in manufacturing? And I'm like, Dad, I've been in manufacturing since 2008. Like, come on. And we just never made that connection. And one of my previous guests, she was talking about how, daughters of manufacturers, those dads need to start talking about what they're doing with their daughters, because a lot of women that I've talked to, they've actually succeeded the business after their dad retired, or they're in line to be the next owner of the company that their dad started. So it's just really interesting to see, a lot of these influential women growing up in manufacturing, but they never really talked about it until much later on. So I think if we have those conversations earlier, that would really help get the ball moving and more girls excited about it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, I look at, so my husband's a firefighter. So, all the little boys want to be firefighters, right? Because they go to Safety Town and they see all these guys in their uniforms and the camaraderie, and they're firing off the hoses and they're, saving people from burning buildings. That these young boys grow up and say, I want to be a firefighter. I want to do that. Well, I can tell you 99% of what my husband does is not any of that. He's a paramedic. He's responding to horrific car accidents and elderly falls at home and cardiac arrest and all these other things. But the perception of what his career is so much shinier and cooler. So one of the things that I always push is, how do we talk about manufacturing? Okay. 3D printing is in almost every single school in the country now. I don't know of any programs that don't have a 3D printer or have access to a 3D printer. So what I do is I like to talk about additive manufacturing. So normally when I'm talking, and I start talking in elementary school, like kids don't come into my home without seeing, I've got an Abraham Lincoln over there. I've got, motor components. I've got a little fake robotic arm. That we don't talk about careers in manufacturing. Any kid that's ever been to my house knows about careers in manufacturing. They know I work in manufacturing. One of my favorite things is some girls like sparks and sparkles. That's my hashtag I use all the time, because there's no reason that you can't look put together and enjoy doing your hair and your makeup and have your nails polished and have a career in manufacturing. So what I normally say is, do you know what a 3D printer is? And they're like, oh yeah, 3D printers are really cool. I'm like, that's additive manufacturing. So it's taking and it's laying material down, and it's making a product. So it's then there's subtractive manufacturing. And that's what I do. We take a big block of metal and we use high-end cutting tools, and we use CNC coordinates like XYZ, like you use in Minecraft. And as soon as you say that, they're like, wait, what? And we actually go with high-speed machining, and we shave away and we carve and we drill all of that metal out until we're left with a final product. And all of a sudden it's like the light goes off, because we spoke in a language that they understand. We've said this is subtractive versus additive. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. So like we do 3D printing with like plastic and stuff. And I'm like, And they're like, and you do that with metal? I'm like, yes. So parts of your airplane, your car, when you go to the dentist and you get your teeth cleaned, those are all components that are all machined. And then, we have the Riddell football factory here that I'm like, do you know that they have Haas machines? Yeah, because they make casts, they make dies that they actually make the football in. It's all machined out of metal. And it's amazing for me to see that moment when kids are like, oh, that's really cool. It's like, yeah. So let's talk about all the positions that are available. You need somebody to design it. You need somebody to program it. You need somebody to run the machine. You need somebody to make sure that the quality of that part is exactly what the customer expects. Then you need somebody to package it, ship it, and more importantly, you need somebody to sell it. Those are all careers in manufacturing. So I try to really cover the diversity of, everything from HR to finance to sales to marketing. Those are all positions in manufacturing. So just because you start here running a machine doesn't mean that's where you're going to end. That's your foot in the door. So I really try to stress that when I talk about careers in manufacturing, and when I have that conversation with manufacturers of, when you do a facility tour, you should make sure that they meet somebody running the machines. They should meet somebody who's actually programming. They should meet somebody in engineering, and you should be like, this is Joe. Joe's been with our company for 7 years. Joe, what part are you making right here? Because so often manufacturers say, we're in the aerospace industry. Like, that's cool. And it's
you mentioned facility tours too, and what one of the tips is, make sure they're meeting the person that's running the CNC machining. Do you have any other suggestions on what manufacturers should do to sort of up their game when it comes to facility tours? Because I've been in several companies and several facilities, and there were memorable ones, and there were ones where I was just like, this is so boring. I need to get out of here. I wanted nothing to do with that type of manufacturing, because it wasn't engaging and it wasn't exciting. So what's some of your advice to manufacturers on making, some of those boring facility tours more engaging and exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, and we're in manufacturing, right? We tend to nerd out and always think what we're doing is cool, but guess what? It's not. So what I would do is I would find somebody who's actually machining a component and have them prepped and ready to talk about it ahead of time. Hey, my name's Bob. I went to, Platt Tech. I graduated from the Career Tech Center there, and I've been with the company for 7 years. The part that I'm machining is going to go into, don't talk about what it does. If it regulates fuel or whatever, okay, fine, whatever. This is going to go into a plane, and it's actually going to regulate how much gas they're using while they're flying the plane. Isn't that cool? If I don't machine this the right way, it's not going to be efficient. And that means that plane is not going to run the right way. Mm-hmm. So really getting into the specifics of how the component impacts life. So one of my favorite things ever to show to young kids when they're coming through and they're touring is we have an artificial hip. So I like to show it to them, and I'm like, do you guys know what this is? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, this is a hip. Does anybody have like an aunt or a grandma or know somebody that ever had to have hip surgery and get a fake hip? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, this is what got put in their body. They use big screws and they actually drill this into their bone. And it's kind of horrific. And kids are like, oh, but it puts it into real life of like, somebody machined a part specifically to fit my grandmother's hip. And now my grandmother walks around and now she can go to the park, or my aunt can do this, my aunt can do that. So for me, it's how is your product that you're making actually impacting life? I apologize if you make hinges for cabinets. It's probably not quite as exciting for kids, but you could talk about how hinges for cabinets have actually evolved and the difference in them now of how they're actually designed and made that's different. But for me, it's how does that part impact the greater world around us? I went and toured a college in North Carolina, Randolph Community College. Garrett Parker was my teacher. I go, Garrett, what's the weirdest thing you guys make in this county? And he said, and grab one right here because there's always one handy. The lids for Sharpies. We don't make any other component. We just make the lid. I said, every kid that leaves your facility should know that you guys make those. Do you know how many times I touch a Sharpie in a day? Do you know how many I have at my fingertip at the ready? Do you know how many times my kids steal my Sharpies? Both my kids will tell you the caps for these Sharpies are all made in Randolph County, North Carolina. So for me, it's finding that weird little niche of that moment that's going to leave them kind of questioning how things are built and made around them. Because I can tell you, I have a 10 and 11-year-old, and they literally think like, this phone breaks, I just buy a new one. No, somebody had to design this. Somebody had to create it. Somebody had to manufacture it, product test it, package it, and ship it to me. Somebody had to have it ready for Verizon. So when I was ready to buy it, it got shipped right to my house. And it's the same. I mean, a metal pen on your desk, everything around them is manufactured. So for me, the job of manufacturers is kind of creating that light bulb moment where students start to see the world around them as actually manufactured and not something that's purchased. You don't just buy a bike. Somebody built each of those components and manufactured those pieces. So I think it's really important that we make that link. The other thing is, and this is where, sometimes I get sideways looks from manufacturers, but they should meet somebody running the equipment. They should meet somebody in engineering who's talking about design and show the cool ways that they're using CAD/CAM to really vet out ideas. Talk about how they work with a machinist on the floor. We're a team. Oh yeah, Bob out there. So yeah, he went to Platt Tech. I graduated there too. We were 2 years apart, but we worked on a project together our senior year. Or we're on a robotics team together when we're in high school and we actually worked on a team. They also need to meet somebody from the C-suite. They need to meet somebody who is there making decisions about how that company runs every day. And it could be a 45-second conversation of, hi, I'm Joan and I run the company here. This was my father's company and I took over 5 years ago. We are so excited to have you here today. I'm going to be really honest. I hope I see a couple of you back here interviewing soon because we are looking for people just like you. And that's when you make that personal link with a student where they start to then visualize themselves potentially working at your company and being a part of your organization. And I think that's really important. And I think we miss that a lot of times. And I understand the C-suite is busy and they probably can't come out. But if you're having 20 students come through and see your program, they need to see the person who's sitting in the office making all those decisions on what they're going to do and how they're going to run their company. It's so important for the next generation to understand that link and for somebody to take that time with them because we're growing up in a different generation, whereas I'm sure you're raising your kids different than your parents raised you. I'm raising my kids different than I was raised. I answer all the questions before they're asked. Don't do this because of this. It's never just like, don't do that because I said so, because I heard that too much as a kid. Don't do that because I said so. So I think it's important that we have that as a part of the conversation. And then this is the big one. manufacturers do so much in their local communities. So I know that like our company has a scholarship that we've just released for somebody that passed away in our company from MS. So we've got for the school that he went to and was super, important to him, we have a scholarship set up from him, in his memory. And we do the MS walk every year as a company. We do Fitbit and health challenges. It's really important to our company. And it's important that people see that as a component of your culture.
Yeah.
Because the next workforce are not quite as driven as much by money. I'm not going to say they're not driven by money, but they're not driven as much by money. And if you're talking to an elementary, middle, or high school student, they have no concept of cash.
Right.
None. I can tell you for a fact, my nephew at 14 made $450 reffing this summer, and he thinks he's going to buy a personal jet. I mean, he thinks he's loaded. So for me, talking about money is not so important, but when you talk about the work you do for Habitat for Humanity, the work that you do feeding the hungry in your area, anything that you're doing that's feeding your community and helping your community, anything that you're doing, work on diversity, equity, and inclusion is super important to the next workforce. They are very different than us Gen Xers because they see the world as a much bigger place and they see their piece of that and their position in the world is much bigger than we ever saw ours. We're like, yeah, we're one person. I recycle and I, try not to use too much gas in my car. They want their entire family to reduce their carbon footprint. And guess what? They want their employers to do the same thing. They want to know what you're doing to really change the environment around you. What are you doing to impact your community? So making that a part of your tour and making that a part of your talk track, you've got to brag on some of those things that your company is doing. And I don't think we do a very good job of that. And it does make it more exciting and engaging when you're there and you're like, wait, you guys do what? Oh, we helped build a house. Or, oh, we donate X number of cans of food to our food bank every year for Thanksgiving. Or really laying out how they're impacting their greater community with the profits that they're making too.
Mm-hmm. I think it's twofold too, because if you are excited about talking about your products and what value you're providing to the rest of the world, and kids come in to actually see what everybody is doing in that space, I think it excites the employees too. Mm-hmm. Like they want to be proud of the work that they're doing. So if you spice it up and make it exciting, employers are going to be proud to be employed by you, and they're going to want to continue doing good work. And one of the things that kept coming to my mind when you were talking about that is superheroes. Like my two little boys they're so excited about superheroes. Every day they pretend to be, a Jedi or one of the Avengers. And I feel like if you could tie that in with manufacturing during these facility tours, especially with younger kids that are coming in, and like show how you're, saving something or providing value, that would get them excited as well too.
Absolutely. So, making automobiles and planes safer and faster and more fuel efficient and all the work that we're doing. I mean, we really are the unsung heroes, right? When you talk to somebody who's running a machine or designing a component, they're not going to talk about the fact of fuel efficiency and how this is going to save, millions of dollars for airlines and how it's going to reduce, United's carbon footprint. But that's a part of what we're doing. And if you look at manufacturing, we're problem solvers. And I think when we can really get that out and say, we are solving the problems of the world one component at a time, I mean, how could you not get excited about a career in manufacturing?
So in terms of high schools now, because when I was growing up, we had certain classes like home ec or sewing or, certain classes that did touch on some of the basic trades. But within some schools, they started getting rid of those opportunities. And the school that my daughter goes to, they're really trying to bring back some of that learning for the trades. And, they're discussing, the pandemic screwed everybody up, but they're discussing bringing back a career day where local unions are coming in. What advice do you have for schools in particular on how to change the way that they're discussing some of these learning opportunities, or what do they need to bring that back? How do they have those conversations, not just with the students, but the parents as well, so the parents don't continue to have misconceptions of manufacturing?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say it's not a perception issue when it comes to students, because perception would mean they're thinking about a career in manufacturing and choosing otherwise, and we're flattering ourselves. They're not even thinking about us. We're not even on the radar. So for me, it's definitely awareness for students, but for parents, it is perception. They remember the GM layoffs and they remember all the things that happened. I mean, if you're in the Seattle area, you probably want to go to work for Boeing, and your parents will be like, don't go to work for Boeing. They do layoffs every 10 years. Whereas you look at Boeing and they're a huge organization, they do really good things. So for me, it's really understanding. And if you want to talk to parents, you need to talk about college credit and career and tech ed, because that's one of the misconceptions, right? CTE is where the bad kids or the dumb kids go. That's not true. I mean, here in the state of Ohio, you could graduate from a career tech center with 27 credits for University of Akron. 27. And do you know how much that costs your family? Zero. Right. It doesn't cost a penny. So looking at dual credit and dual enrollment and talking about being associated with higher learning facilities is invaluable for high schools and career centers that are bringing these programs back. We're seeing them all throughout the country. We're seeing, when I was in Mississippi, a high school program stopped by and they said, listen, we've got the building, we've got the budget. What do we need to do to get this started? I was like, oh, okay, we're in the right place. Let's talk about it. So for me, it's really, if you want to have the conversation with mom and dad, you have to talk about career stability, career growth, benefits packages, tuition reimbursement, and college credit, because that's where we start to change the perception for parents for careers in manufacturing. And it's important that we really do start to get those parents into some of the facility tours and getting out into industry to see what it's all about. I hear people beat up on guidance counselors all the time. And I'm like, listen, guidance counselors are not guiding careers right now. They're so busy with dropout rates, teen suicide, drug issues, vaping, all the other things. Yeah. The last thing that they're doing is actually guiding career decisions. That needs to happen at home. That needs to be conversations that we look at who are career influencers. And for me, those are other teachers, science teachers, math teachers, engineering, STEM teachers. Bring all of them in to do internships and facility tours in the summertime and have them go back thinking about how quality and high-level inspection is really a great way of applying math concepts, how metallurgy and the difference in hardness of materials and what you're cutting with is really heavily rooted in science. And when we can start to collaborate between some of those different areas and start to use real life examples for students, we start to take away some of the mystery of careers in manufacturing. So we're saying, hey, oh yeah, we did this metallurgy project and we did the difference between machining titanium and aluminum. Okay, so what's the two difference between those materials? What makes them different? And what kind of cutting tools did they use? Wow, did you hear they're cutting with diamonds? That's pretty cool. So talking about like hardness of materials and just tying those in with standard curriculum. And I have to be honest, the programs that we've worked with on creating this kind of synergy between them, science teachers and math teachers are so excited to be relevant. Because I mean, what do you say in algebra, right? When am I ever going to use this?
Yep.
Machining instructors like, here, come and see algebra at work, right?
I was one of those students, like, I'm not going to use math every day. Are you kidding me? And now I still use my fingers to count numbers. But that's why I'm a writer and I do technical writing.
See, it's perfect. But yeah, so for me, it's like if you can create those relevant moments for your comprehensive instructors, your science and your math. I have a local school here that's an urban school district. They're 100% on free and reduced lunches, a lot of fifth generation welfare families, and they can't get kids in the machining class. And I said, do me a favor, go down to study hall and take your Haas controller with you and plop it on a desk. Fire off a program so it's going by really quickly, hold a component in your hand and says, who hates math? And every kid in the room is going to look at you and be like, come on, I'm going to show you how you can actually make math cool. And it was funny because we saw the program totally turn around. He's like, I just never thought of it that way. I never thought of the fact that I'm making math cool. I'm like, well, I don't know if you'll ever make math cool, but you're making it relevant, which is another component for students as well, is making it relevant. Like, where am I ever going to use this? Everywhere.
This is awesome. I'm going to share this episode with my sister because she's actually a math teacher and she gets the same questions from her students all the time. And she's like, math isn't everything. She still tries to get me on board of the math love train, but I'm just like, no, I'm never going to like math. You got that part of the brain. I got the writing brain. We're good. Like,
I love it. We need to get her into a manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
So she can videotape the XYZ and be like, look, they're really using it.
Yeah. She actually got one of my t-shirts for the logo because she loved the logo and she's like, I wore it at school. Everybody's asking what this is. And she's like, do you want to come in and start talking about manufacturing? And I'm like, yeah, just let me know. And I was like, we can even explain to them how math ties in with manufacturing. I probably won't be good at that part of the talk, so you'll probably have to jump in, but she's going to love this conversation because she is always trying to get kids excited about math and show them how it applies to everything in life. And she's like, I see it. She's like, I know they could see it if they could just get guided. So I think these are all great points and great advice. And, you know, there's this challenge right now that we're trying to close this skills gap. Mm-hmm. And the recruitment challenge and getting diverse groups excited about manufacturing, because it is really a pathway to prosperity. So I wanted to have that conversation with you real quick before we end our conversation. Why is it so important for us to bring manufacturing back to its prime here in the United States? You're very passionate about what you do. And I just wanted to hear your thought process on that. Like, what drives you every day to show students, look, this is a great pathway, and this is the reason why? What are some of the things that you tell them of why manufacturing is so important to our communities, especially the smaller communities that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. Manufacturing is the backbone of the U.S., hands down. When you look at the best communities in the country, they're making something. Don't get me wrong, hospitality is great, but when we use the term essential workers, we were talking about healthcare and manufacturers. So I know that we had, we had facilities that were running, and because they're making ventilator components, or they're switching their production lines to make ventilator components. Mm-hmm. We had career tech centers that were making PPE for healthcare workers. Like, if that doesn't choke you up, I mean, come on. If you want a purpose in life, manufacturing is the backbone of the US, and manufacturing is for everybody. That's what we're really trying to change right now, is for every background, every component, every single individual can thrive in a career in manufacturing. I actually just started working with the Uniquely Abled Academy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. Yeah. It's amazing. It's Uniquely Abled Academy, and you can Google it and look it up, but it is for high functioning individuals on the autism spectrum to become machinists. And we are looking right now to implement new programs throughout the US. It started at College of the Canyons in California, but if you want to talk about underserved populations, I mean, I still watch the video. I have goosebumps right now thinking about it, of these young men saying, listen, I was sitting at home twiddling my thumbs, not knowing what I could ever do. And I always loved working with Lego, and I wanted to do something with my life. This is what I'm doing now. They had 100% graduation. They had 100% placement. And now 3 years after inception of that program, all of those people are still working at the same company. Like, if that's not success, I don't know what is. So for me, it's really showing the fact that manufacturing is for women. Manufacturing is for every cultural background, every skin color, every demographic. Everybody can be successful in manufacturing. You have to pass a drug test, be willing to learn, and show up ready to work. And if you've got those three things, there is nothing that can stop you. The other thing is, with the skills gap right now, if you want a job where you're going to have a really great upward trajectory, manufacturing is where it is. You show up, you work hard, you do everything you want, you take every learning opportunity, you will absolutely move up within the organization. And
especially with the baby boomers retiring, because there's a huge amount of them that's stepping out. We're starting to see it where I work. A lot of people are starting to retire and get on with their life.
Yeah, the great tsunami. And the other skills gap we're not talking about are educators. What about the career and tech ed teachers that are all retiring? My machine tool technology teachers, our engineering teachers that are retiring, and there's nobody to carry the baton behind them, because you are going to make less money than you will in industry, but you will impact a heck of a lot more lives. So I talk all the time when I meet young, passionate individuals that I'm like, hey, if you're about 5 years in industry, talk to your local machine tool technology program and see what their plan is for when their teacher retires, because we've seen amazing programs completely shut down because they have nobody to take it over. So for all the action for manufacturers out there, if you have some great people in your organization, find out about being an adjunct instructor at your local community college, or working with your local career center or high school to help teach some of these programs, because that's where we really have a gap as well.
So before I let you go, Gwen Bradley made a final comment here. Wow, Toni is a firecracker and wealth of information about manufacturing. Love her energy and passion for manufacturing and our youth. And I agree with Gwen as well. And, for anyone that wants to find out more information about how to maybe, cross that bridge between manufacturers and school, where can they find more information about the things that you do, and who can they contact?
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect to anybody that I can. I only manage the Haas in 14 states, but I have connections that do the other states. But yeah, a rising tide raises all ships. If we don't look at this as our manufacturing skills gap as a collective, we'll never fix it. So I'm here to help in any way that I can. And one of the things I like to say to young ladies that are considering careers in manufacturing is Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but she did it backwards and in high heels. So come on, we need more girls.
I also love your hashtag. What was it? Sparks and
Some
sparkles.
girls like sparks and sparkles.
That's awesome. Well, before I let you go, Toni, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just want to say that this is really, I love that you're doing this. I love the fact that you're working to create awareness for more young women in our industry because we need them. Females are 50% of the population and about 10% of the shop floor. So we definitely need to work to encourage more young women to build the confidence to come in and have an amazing career and be an entrepreneur, start your own company, run your own robotics team, teach, do all of the things.
You brought a really interesting point up about teaching. And I think that's a message we need to start focusing on too, because this is really the first time that it's been brought up in the conversations I've had about how teachers are even starting to retire. So
yeah, we're losing a ton of them and they're great and they're super hard to replace too.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Toni. I appreciate your time. For everyone that viewed in today, thank you as well. Have a great and safe weekend, and I will see you next time on another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. Bye, everyone. This episode has been sponsored by IAM Marketing. Sales just don't happen. We believe everything starts with you, yourself, your personal brand. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. IAM Marketing is on a mission to help entrepreneurs earn the attention of their dream clients without using paid ads, automation, or creating a webinar. Contact IAM Marketing to schedule a free 30-minute strategy session at iammarketingnetwork@gmail.com. That's AYALA marketingnetwork@gmail.com.